But Roosevelt knew that his program still hadn't reached millions of desperate Americans, and he didn't know how long they would wait. Discontent and frustration gave rise to any number of demagogues, including the charismatic radio priest Father Charles Coughlin,
children and shelterless men and women,
Dr. Francis Townsend, self-proclaimed advocate for the elderly, radical spellbinders who claimed the New Deal was dying. During 1934, one of these would-be saviors developed a national following and presidential ambitions.
because Hoover wanted to plow up every...
He was called the Kingfish. Senator and former Louisiana Governor Huey Long.
After we told you people that Hoover was a numbskull...
The best entertainment you had was when Huey came to town to speak.
They put it in to plow up every third row of cotton.
Everybody went to hear him, whether they were for him or against him. He was marvelous.
The Lord has answered the prayer. He has called the barbecue.
He used such expressive language.
He said to
You just had to listen.
155 million Americans.
And when people listened, many discovered they liked what they heard.
What Huey Long was saying was that he was going to soak the rich and he was going to give that money to the poor. His plan was never really carefully worked out, and in his own state in Louisiana, he fell notably short of redistributing the wealth. But it had a kind of direct appeal that the more complex programs of the New Deal lacked, and also provided a focus for the animus against the rich that had been building during the years of the Great Depression.
Long promised every American a house, a car, a radio. In return, he wanted power. Absolute power.
You couldn't do anything in Louisiana unless you got his okay. He was vicious. And if you told him no, he'd knock you down.
He had built up a private police force. He had shown his contempt for the democratic processes, and that created a great deal of worry in Washington.
Not just Southerners, but Midwestern farmers and New York factory workers were joining Long Share Our Wealth clubs.
I advised our Roosevelt...
By 1935, Franklin Roosevelt was privately calling Huey Long the most dangerous man in America.
They sat up and called General Hugh S. Johnson down here to take charge of that.
When you have food riots, you have the makings of a dictatorship. Don't think you wouldn't do it, too. You might vote the wrong way. He rose on the votes of the people, and Huey Long was rising on the votes of the people, too.
Huey Long never got the chance to run for president. He was cut down by an assassin in September 1935.
What? Next president of the United States.
Who then is the inflationist? Roosevelt or the National Union?
From Detroit came another voice preaching simple solutions. Father Charles Coughlin, the radio priest, blamed the Depression on a conspiracy by the bankers. Coughlin, who had 40 million listeners a week, called the president a betrayer and a liar.
And so, Mr. Roosevelt, who was very loquacious in 1933 about driving the money changers out of the temple, is now bent upon another policy. I think driving the workmen out of decent annual wages.
Both Coughlin and Long charged the president with neglecting the needs of farmers, workers, the elderly, and the poor.
Roosevelt's fear was that people like Charles Coughlin and Huey Long might siphon off enough votes from the Democratic Party as to split the working class or vote on the left and give the election to the Republican candidate. This was a very real concern.
Roosevelt's watched the Huey Long Share the Wealth campaign. He's watched the country drift left. And so he's shrewd and politic enough to realize that if he moves in that direction, then he breathes a new lease on life into his administration.
This work